Hi, Network. This week we're going to be reviewing my findings from the Cyclistic case study. If you didn't see last week when I went through the steps of performing the analysis, I really suggest you check it out. I drank some raw eggs and cut my nose in the process of making that video, so I would really appreciate it if you looked at it. If not, I'll fill you in right now. Today I want to go through my presentation and walk through the slides, and then go through my report, which has a bit more information not mentioned in the presentation. Both are already on GitHub and have been on GitHub since I finished this project, so you may have seen these already, but I'll be providing a bit more context here. Before I present, I do want to set the scene, so to speak, and clarify some things about the case study. The presentation is aimed towards the Director of Marketing and Executive Team. I explain the purpose and everything and set up the company in the presentation. But I do want to specify that the data I used for this presentation is from Q2 2019 to Q1 2020. Last week when doing my analysis, I accidentally imported Q3 2019 twice, making all the results I showed at the end. The process is still valid, but I had to change the data set. I noted all of this in my data log and the description of the video last week, if you saw that. But just know that these numbers have been confirmed and validated and everything is included in the data log. I've also created a new rule about data analysis for myself, which is make sure you're looking at what you think you're looking at, because it could just be wrong. I also want to mention, because the data set, like I mentioned, is ending in Q1 2020, this is right around when the lockdown started. And I will mention this and kind of how the real world situation at the time would tie into what findings I would have presented. I don't go too into detail for this just because it is a bit confusing, it being 2026 and the data from 2020 and kind of going back and forth, and yeah. So I just want to provide that context now, and we'll get a bit more into how the timing of the real world events would have affected my analysis when I go over the reports, because I do include more information about it then. But again, just wanted to set the scenes before we get into it. So without further ado, I will go ahead and we will present my findings. This is my impression of somebody from Gen Z with the wearable mic that they don't wear, but they talk into really closely. So this is going to be our setup for presentations. I was doing some tests earlier, and sometimes my shirt will look very white and the light will get weird. We use all natural lighting here. Okay, we're very energy efficient. So if it looks a little weird, I'm saving power, and we're helping the environment and making the world a better place. All right, so you can't judge me. Hello, and thank you for being here. I'm Jacob, and today I'll be acting as a junior data analyst for Cyclistic, while I talk about my analysis for the upcoming casual rider marketing campaign. Setting the agenda, we'll first have an overview of Cyclistic, as well as the upcoming marketing campaign, before going into a demographic and then behavioral analysis where I show my insights, and then how those insights can be leveraged in the upcoming marketing campaign. A little about Cyclistic. We have 5,800 bicycles across the greater Chicago area, and we have two types of riders. The first being casual riders who pay for their rides as needed, and the second being annual members who pay a yearly subscription so they can ride whenever they need without having to pay for individual rides. Data used for this analysis includes data from the past year, Q2 of 2019 to Q1 2020. And the data inside these data sets included trip information. We primarily focused on the trip ID, duration, and time of trips. And rider information included member type, either casual or annual, as well as the age of riders and their gender. So the goal of this upcoming marketing campaign is to increase the annual members. Our Director of Marketing, Lily Monroe, believes that the number of annual members is tied into our financial success in the future. When we look at the trip information of riders by segment, we can see that members make up about 3/4 of all trips taken, while casual members are just at 1/4. This means that members are riding on average more often. Looking at the casual rider age demos, we can see that ages 25 to 34 take up 50% of this casual rider segment, and ages 16 to 24 follow in second place with taking up 1/4. When we compare this to the annual member age demographics, we can see that 25 to 34 takes up the same 50% slot, but 16 to 24
doesn't even take up half as much, with only under 10%. This means that casual riders skew a bit younger when it comes to looking at the number of trips taken. Looking at the gender split between the two segments, we can see that casual riders are approximately 40% female when it comes to the number of trips, and annual members are about a quarter. This shows that we could possibly be failing to convert female riders into annual members, and this is a segment that we can work to improve on. Trips over the past year, when we look at the annual members represented in the orange line and the casual riders represented in this blue line, we can see that the travel needs of riders seem to be positively correlated, where they're both needing the same time, but we just have less rides on casual riders. Looking at the weekly trends, we can see that casual riders' peak ridership is on the weekends, Sunday and Saturday. Comparing this to annual members, however, we see that their number of rides are highest on the weekdays and decrease on the weekends. So this shows that there is a difference in needs in terms of when people are traveling. And when we compare this to trip duration, we can see that casual riders have 4 times greater trip duration, also showing us that this is possibly because of different needs. Casual riders ride for about an hour on average, while annual members ride for just around 14 minutes. These two takeaways, looking at trip duration and the weekly trends, shows that casual riders probably have different use cases, more in line with recreation, while annual members are doing weekly tasks that are predictable, most likely work. My recommendations based on these insights are to start prepping the campaign during quarantine. If the situation permits, I would suggest launching late spring to capitalize on the summer peak we would expect, and then center our messaging on recreational use, in line with the usage patterns shown by casual riders. I would also focus on weekend travel and align with the casual user demo, which is the younger audiences, ages 16 to 24 and 25 to 34, and lean into our untapped female rider market. Any questions? No? Thank you.
Yay, Jacob. What a good presentation, am I right? I think it was okay. I think it was all right. This is all still in the GitHub repo. It's been there for a while. By the time this is published, we'll go ahead and look at that now. This is the report, so you can see that it's stressed to Leah Monroe, which is the Director of Marketing, and the executive team. And this is the Q2 2019 to Q1 2020 bike share report. So data analysis for a future marketing campaign. This right here in the summary immediately gives recommendations. This is very written in business writing form, where everything is very cut out, not a lot of fluff. Casual rider demos is basically everything that I see in the presentation right here. This is going to be the same. Over the COVID pandemic, I gave a brief summary of where we are in COVID at this point. You can see the date that I used for this presentation is 4/15/2020. I felt this to be a reasonable time to have this brief analysis completed with this data set. So I thought this was a good time. The first thing that I do is different than the presentation, and the reason I didn't include this presentation just because it wasn't very relevant to kind of showcasing the data, and I didn't want to get too distracted about COVID. But I mentioned the shutdown, which had just went into effect, and it had actually just been extended for the first time, so people are going from, oh, it's going to be a 2-week thing, to this is going to be maybe a little bit longer, and then it was a bit longer. And I mentioned how, you know, if the shutdown is extended, it probably wouldn't be worth doing a full campaign. Some things that I don't touch on that I was also kind of thinking of was, how is ridership going to change during a shutdown? I noticed in the data at the very end, and because the numbers get smaller, it's hard to see it, that the number of rides in casual riders started to rise a bit more, while casual riders started to decline. This could have been because maybe public transport was less accessible, so people that were essential workers, like nurses, were having to bike to work. I don't get into this in the report because this wasn't the purpose of the report. The report wasn't planning for COVID. It was using the data, and the data I used just happened to be right when the pandemic started. So I know it's a very niche use case, and I get a little bit too much into it, so I don't want to go full in. But I do want you to know that I was considering these factors and thinking about them. So this could have been a very, very long report, but I didn't. I include where I got the data was just from that web index.
and then just a general process about uploading it into the database and using dbeaver to do some queries and build out fields that were needed and aggregating the data. I also let them know that there's the data log. This is in also the GitHub repo. If you look in the documentation, all my projects have code logs or data logs that you can look at that show the process. This one was very thorough. And I also include what happened when I noticed that Q4 data was incorrect and it was just Q3 twice. So I go through the process of correcting that and getting everything fixed and the correct results. And I leave that incorrect segment in there just for posterity, letting you know that there was a mistake at one point, but I fixed it and I have my work to show all that. So the data concessions or the data limitations were that I didn't have the user ID to find real population data. Rather, it's the count of rides in that category. So we weren't saying that necessarily there was 38% female riders for casual riders. That could be the case. It might be a little bit different. There's some there's not 100% confidence that is the population, but it's likely representative of the population. But there's might be some slight bias if, say, men are more active and traveling by bike than women. So that's something to consider, something I didn't want to necessarily make a big point of in the presentation, as it would probably make somebody want to tune out. It's like, oh, well, this isn't relevant, this isn't accurate. I do call in my analysis next step to get this data and find these real populations to see if anything is askew. And based on that information, we could either move forward with the original plans or delve more into that. If something is off, then that is also significant because it shows that maybe one gender or one age is riding much more and it has different use cases. So that's all included here. You're probably not even thinking about any of this, but I spent a lot of time thinking about this data set and outcomes, and then I lay out my recommendations. And then at the end of the report, I have the visualizations created with brief descriptions. You can see I referenced them here. So I have like C figure 2. I didn't want to put them in the actual report because, as you can see, this is a 2-page report. So if I broke it up with 3 pages of graphs, it would make it look, it'd be very hard to navigate. You wouldn't be able to see everything at a glance. I think this is fairly concise. It may be a bit lengthy. Something like the data process might not be necessary for the team that I'm giving this to, but because the case specifically mentioned for this, as well as the top 3 recommendations, I wanted to be very obvious when putting this in the report and its location, so you could see right away, yes, I checked these boxes. That is the report as a whole. If you're interested, it's all in the GitHub. Again, all the documentation is in the GitHub. The Tableau workbook is in the GitHub. I don't have the packaged workbook in the GitHub because it is a large file, and the way GitHub does large file shares is a bit different. So you'd have to download the dataset. So if you're going out of the way to download a large file by downloading the packaged workbook, you probably would just download the dataset, even though it's a bit larger, but you'd know how to do that. So yeah. Anyways, just know that if you download the Tableau workbook, download the dataset. But that was all. This was a really interesting project, and I like the end result. I think it's the most professional project I've done by far. Maybe not the most convoluted or involved project, but I really like the results. I don't know. I think it was really cool. I'm very excited. I know I've said that like 5 times, but I really like this project, and I like the end results. And there's another case study which I'm probably going to be doing next. But I will want to return to this data, I think, in the future if I need another project. I can look at how things look through and after COVID and kind of look at real-world events. So maybe that'll be a cool analysis project, kind of looking at that data. But I have the next case study, and then there's another project that I want to do about, I won't get too into it in case I can't do it, but it's a good stopping point for today. And I hope you thought this was insightful and well done. I like to tell myself that it was, but if you disagree, let me know and let me know what I could do to make this a bit more informative or better in your opinion. But that is it for today, and I will see y'all later. Bye. This is a more serious episode, but even like every episode, even the intro episode had like a joke at the end after the episode ended, so I feel like I should have something here. I wanted to do, I thought about it briefly, the scene from, I think, Spider-Man 3,
he gets the old suit from the closet and he like opens it and you can see, it's the suit. I was thinking about doing something like that with the outfit because it's the first time I wore the outfit from the logo and the thumbnails. But I went against it because I feel like this is a bit more of a professional video. If I were to tell a recruiter to look at one thing, it would be this video. Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty good. If you have 3 hours, if you have 3 hours, yeah, watch all the videos. Just hire me, man. Just hire me. Give me I want to work. I'm doing work. I can do work. Just let me do the work. I'm doing the work. The economy. The economy, man. The economy.